means 348 milligrams of sodium, not bad, even when you consider what I put into it. And then 4 is the dietary fiber. So, now, out there, of course, in the picnic thing, probably not knife and fork time, but oh boy, look, I'll tell you, this is neat. Get the onions so that they're not overcooked, so that they're a little crunchy in the time. And that cheese crust with the rice is really unusual. It really works well. Okay, ready to springboard in your own way? Always do that. Okay, my springboard is going to be this seafood one with scallops and sole and shrimp and mushrooms, and turn it all in together and pile it up nice and high. Really, a good exotic type thing. Ready? Ready to be exotic? Come on, let's have a go. Okay, this one is phenomenal. That one's phenomenal. This one just it slides up above it slightly. Make the rice crust just exactly as you said before. You see, this is a kind of soggy discus that it turns out to be. It's crisp on the top, and it just cooks through on that last bit. So you've made all of that. That's the basic idea. And now let's get into this one. Here's just a half, or actually a full teaspoonful. It's looking a little lonely on there, but there it goes. And whilst that's heating up, these right here, if you've ever seen this and wondered what they are, they have a papery, sort of light brownish skin on the outside. And when you peel them in, they're purple. And this is a shallot. And for those people, you really need just shallots for the dish. But for those people who, if you've got any sort of problem with onions, and you know, they sort of upset you a little bit, try these. I'm not saying they'll completely work, but there's a theory around that the shallot for some people who are allergic to onions is just tremendous. Look, pulse that just half a dozen times, and take the little top out, and then with the hot oil there, just shake those down into the pan, and just move that around. And that heady aroma that's coming off it straight away. It's not like a garlic, it's not like an onion, it's just between the two, if you like. All right, put the little blade back in on top, and here's some mushrooms. Now these are 8 ounces of mushrooms, it's 4 ounces of shallots, and double the quantity. Obviously the volume is enormously larger, and you can just about cram them in. And there we go. And these are made into a thing which is really called a mirepoix. And mirepoix is really to cut something into about 1/4-inch pieces. If you just pulse it like this, a little pulse machine, you can actually get it down into the tiny little bits that you need for the dish. You just be patient. It takes about 10 or 15 pulses, and it goes down, and you've got what we call the tunnel of love. Look. See? It's just this... It's this wonderful nest of mushrooms that you get from it. Okay, so these are going well here. Just take those and just tap them in. That's good. And then just give it a shake around here. And, you know, I'd like to suggest to you that you give this about 5 minutes. If you give it 5 minutes, what will happen is the mushroom, which is so full of liquid, you know, it's sort of like this now, and gradually, as it heats, it will shrivel up a little bit, and a juice will come out of it. And the juice really should be expressed from this before. You'll notice in the final dish that there are little gaps you'll find in the mix when it's sort of in layers. And that's come as a result of too much liquid that comes out of the mushroom. So try and get those cooked over a fair heat, about a medium heat, and coming down nicely. Good. All right. A little salt just goes in there. Just a little drop of salt, not too much. And some freshly ground black pepper. Just shake that in. About 1/4 teaspoonful of that. We need quite a lot of it. Oh, great. Okay. Now, when that's doing, here is the seafood side of it. This is a piece of sole, and sole or flounder, if you like. And this is cut into what is called goujons, or fingers. And it's where the original fish fingers came from, I guess. And then just got 6 ounces of fish fingers. and just pop those down on the top, just roll them. And look, snow white sole against a bed of mushrooms in the bottom. Looks fabulous. And then here, I've got 8 ounces of, 12 ounces actually, of scallops. And these are the rather large scallops. These are the weather vane scallops down from Alaska. And so if you've got smaller ones, then please just go ahead with the smaller ones. And you don't need to cut them in such small pieces. All right. Turned around, mushrooms brought up in there, all combined together. And then shrimp. Now here's just 6 ounces of shrimp. Lay the shrimp down there like this. Get a nice sharp blade. Run it down the back, and then just see whether there's an advanced sand track in there. You'll see it if there's a sand track. Then just peel it off, and there it is. It's done. And save, please save. Put in a little plastic bag all the shrimp shells. And those will be fabulous later on for a great stock for a seafood soup or something of that nature. All right, so stirring all of that in together. Look, see how it comes? Smashing. A little bit of salt in there, just a touch. And some fresh thyme. If you can make this fresh thyme, dried thyme is one of those, herbs which go so well, but in this case, just about a teaspoonful and a half of that fresh thyme stirred in there, and then that bright note, all right, that where it peaks right up, is just a little bit of lemon. So the lemon, just simply drop it in here. Don't run the risk, please, of having lemon juice with pits in it. I mean, that sort of sends a signal to me, that you don't care. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. About 4 teaspoonfuls. The juice of half a lemon should do just fine. Now, stir it all in together. Looks great. Now, out with the crust that we had before. Shake up the egg substitute and just anoint the bottom, just gently. Just shake it over. And then we just need to pile it in. Let me see. And there, look at it. And the smell is gorgeous with the shrimp and the sole there and the scallops. Just press them out. Press them really down tight. And you say, oh, come on, Graham, that looks as if it's ruinous to it. Not at all. When you see how it actually bubbles up, it's amazing. Now you just fill in all the cracks. Just look for the cracks and fill them in. And then more mix on the top. I mean, just keep on belting it in, and it will all go in, I promise you. Every little spot. Heap it up on the top because it will gradually drop down as it's cooking. Great. Now, a little bit more of the egg substitute on the top. Just pour it in. Look at that. Look at it. Pour it all over like this. And then just a little bit of the cheese. All right? Now, just take it from the bag and stroke it over the top. Just about a tablespoonful of that cheese over the top surface. Good. Into the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 190 degrees centigrade. Open it up at the bottom. Yep. And, oh, I can smell it. Fantastic. A little bit of fresh parsley over the top. Look, and it's just crisp and brown. Just a little bit of cayenne pepper, of paprika, just over the top, just to give it some little bit of color. And let's dive in. Oh, it went crunch. It did a crunch on me, just as it came through. Oh, good. Here we are. And slide it out. Now, this would be just great at a dinner party, wouldn't it? It truly is the sort of thing that you can serve as a dinner party. You know, a great salad on the side, some fresh thyme on the top, just a little bit of that black pepper all over the top of it. Wonderful. Bit of parsley as well. Let's have a look at the numbers. Come through. Okay, so there it is. There. Oh, that looks nice. All luscious lumps. That is our dish. This is the one which is the more compacted egg custard one with shrimp in the center. Good topping of cheese. Looks nice and made with wheat, of course. There is one advantage of mine as well, and that is that if you're suffering from a wheat allergy of some kind, well, you could use this instead. All right, 270 calories, so we come in under the 300. Fat was 22. This is down to 4. Saturated fat, only 1 gram of saturated fat. Percentage of calories from fat then just makes it 13, and that's an amazing total. 93 in cholesterol, 674 in sodium, right down, and 1 up on fiber. I love being 1 up on fiber. Okay, quick nosh. This, you just need a fork. It just simply falls apart before you. Look at it. Oh, so neat. Oh, it's tender. It tastes wonderful. And the seafood is just sparked with the lemon and the thyme. Great dish. Do try it. Don't forget, squeeze out all the moisture from the mushrooms in the beginning. Don't have it too wet. Okay, thanks for being with me once again. God bless you. Love to all your friends. Bye. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. Well, welcome back once again. This time, please put the channel zapper down if you've got one of those things, and don't look at the title which says egg substitutes. It's going to be okay. It's all right. In fact, fasten your seatbelt. What I'm going to do is do just a simple little dish, first of all, show you a technique on how to use it, and then, of course, springboard once again into something a little bit more exotic, something where you can try and put that technique to place in your own kitchen and get going. Okay, egg substitutes. Is basically, you know, I used to think, when I heard of egg substitutes, I used to think, oh gosh, they put all kinds of chemicals into something and I don't want that. I want an egg as an egg and I just want to enjoy it. But you know, with Trina, she's had, you know, some difficulties with her heart and all that stuff. And so the egg yolk was a problem, whereas the white was okay. So I was really quite intrigued to find out that an egg substitutes, at least some of them, have got, in fact, just egg white. It's 99.4% egg white there, or egg product in it. And just a little bit of something else in there. And of course, I was really fascinated to know what that might be. Well, it's a little bit of annatto, which is the yellow coloring, which is also a natural coloring. But there's also just some little genius in there. It's a derivative from seaweed, and I'm not sure just exactly what it does, and nobody will ever tell me, but at least I got to work with it. And if you've ever tried it, you might have actually thrown it into a pan, treated it like you normally would do scrambled egg, and terrible. And you said, never again. Well, have a look at this one and see whether this works for you. Okay? Come and join me. Good, everything nice and warm. First of all, let's get a little bit of oil in both of those plates, or not the oil in that one. We use margarine in that one, but anyway, here we go. Mushrooms. Now, I'll get round to the eggs in a second, but just to wrap it around a simple little idea. Now, I think I was about 8 when my dad actually said to me and said to the chef in our hotel, go in and find out how to cook. And that's when I started about 50 years ago. So, and I remember the chef saying to me, see, you know, he was very French. He said, see these veins in the mushroom. When you use a butter, then the butter soaks into the veins. Oh, and it is lovely and round and beautiful. And I remember receiving that. But he said, always put a little lemon juice in there too. And that really stuck with me. Now, this is what we do with this one. Just take the stalk out and loosen it. Now put these two in just a little of that oil. And that's a little olive oil with just a touch of toasted sesame oil in it, you know, standard stuff. And just lay that in the pan. That's about medium heat. And then take the lemon. You see, because lemon does cut back somehow on the fat. But I used to think, well, I'll have the fat and the lemon, and that would really taste great. Now, if you can do without the fat altogether, the big question in my mind was, would the lemon do it? Would the lemon be okay? So we tried it. And fantastic things happened. All right, so what we're doing here is just screwing that lemon into there so that you've got plenty of juice and it's all in one place with a sharp little spout so that you can direct it exactly where you want it. So we need about half a teaspoonful of lemon juice in the top of each one of those caps. So that it just sits there. Now the heat underneath that is coming underneath and it's going to brew that lemon juice and sort of simmer it inside the caps, which results in it permeating every morsel of the flavor of that mushroom. All right, then just a little bit, where's it gone? Oh, here we are. What we call the Creole torpedo. This is the cayenne pepper, and just a touch of cayenne pepper, also with mushrooms. Just remember, lemon juice, cayenne pepper with mushrooms seems to bring out a kind of field flavor if it's missing. Not too hot, you really won't taste it, but it's just a little bite in there. Okay. All right, so there we go, and those are doing just fine. Now, over here, just a few bits to get cracking. Here is an English muffin, which, having come from England, I was amazed because there weren't such things as English muffins, and they didn't look like this anyway. But they've got there now, so. They're called crumpets, and then they'd go just on one side and smothered in butter, of course. So that's toasted, and then here, I've got a piece of Canadian bacon. Now, around my home, what I like to do is to have Canadian bacon in a block and then keep it in, you know, one of those little bags. And I find that way I can measure and get it just the right kind of thickness that I want. And I just want 1 ounce per each one of these muffins at the moment. Okay. Here's another thing. And this time, a rather neat thing to show you. I'm going to use that larger. This is this large piece, or the end piece. I'll use something else later. But this is a skimmed mozzarella cheese. Huh? And I don't know if you've ever tried to cut mozzarella cheese like this, but see how that tears with a knife blade through there? Right. Well, this is a knife blade which actually you can cut right the way through, and it releases it as it goes. So this means that you should be able to cut thinner slices easier than you would otherwise. All right, so 2 slices. So it's quite simple. There we go. And 2 muffins in there, everything going fine. All right, now let's have a look at the egg substitute and see what happens there. Just not oil, but just a little bit of polyunsaturated margarine on the top. I did use butter initially because butter has this charming quality to it. When it starts to go brown around the outside, you know it's exactly the right temperature for eggs to coagulate. Well, that's fine, and it adds that little buttery flavor, but then you've got butter around, and that's a bit of a problem for me. So it just should be blistering a little bit in the pan, and shake it thoroughly. Always shake this part thoroughly, and then dump it all in at once. Just stir it around like this. Now, normally, if you're making scrambled egg, if you're like me, and I love making scrambled egg, you dive into that and start to, shovel it all around and get the eggs to coagulate evenly. Well, in this case, you've got to control your patience just a little bit and just hang over it for about 30 seconds. And what I do is, I rather than just sort of look at it, I just put in about 1/8 teaspoonful of salt and some freshly ground black pepper, you know, both maximizing the flavor always. And just wait for it to start getting sort of disturbed, like the swamp creature is sort of coming out here. Just little bubbles should start to sort of move. Okay. When that starts to happen, and oh dear, those muffins didn't brown quite as much as I wanted, so put them back. Then you push it into the center. Now, you see what's happening here? It's set up just a little, and now, and this is so important if you're going to enjoy this, you start to pull it into the center. Works fairly quickly, pulling it up, and don't worry, it'll be okay. And when you've got it like that, it's at a stage called baveuse. Now then, just put it to one side. Don't keep on doing it until it's completely done, because you want to keep it just to one side, and it'll be just fine. All right. Now, on this one, I think I don't want to burn it, so pop that up. Good. Short order cook again. And then turn the mushroom upside down, and you see it steam bursts. You see how beautiful that looks on there? Now, it steam bursts underneath, and everything is going just fine. Ha! Never put anything sharp into a toaster. In fact, a pair of tongs are usually quite good with muffins, aren't they? Kind of, whether your toaster's like that, you can never reach into it. All right, here is a broiler unit. So what we'll do is just simply set it on a broiler. And you can do all number of these, you know. For brunch, it's just sensational. Drop onto a hot muffin these two little pieces of Canadian bacon, and spoon them out. Eggs. Now, the eggs are nice and moist here, all right? So just drop those, that good spoonful of... and do you know what I'm smelling at the moment? Guess. I'm smelling the freshly ground pepper on that one. Look. All right. Now, it's going to look something like, not that I care really, Eggs Benedict. I refer to Eggs Benedict as edible pornography. But that was when I wasn't really thinking about being polite. And so you just drop that on the top. Okay, now that looks pretty sordid, doesn't it? But you take this small, thin slice of the low-fat mozzarella cheese on there and lift it up and stick it under the broiler. So if you've got the broiler ready, just gently place it on there, about 4 inches away. Should be just about right. And yes. Now, oh yes. I like to place on top of this, instead of, well, there are 2 things you can place on top of it. One is a green onion, and you can cut that green onion in thin slices like so, and that can decorate it. It's quite a decorative shape. Or parsley, chopped parsley, but very much so paprika, because paprika will give you that charming sort of red and green appearance, which is just right. The one on the left is, can you get in the oven with me? See, the one on the left is doing nicely. Why isn't the one on the right? How extraordinary. Thank you. Well, good. That's the way it is. And we just bring this down. Now look at that. Look at this one here. Well, it's all right. The other one's just going as we look at it. Take this up then, and oh, I know. Here we go. With a pair of tongs. Doesn't that look neat? See? As a matter of fact, it's wonderful. And a little dusting of parsley over the top, and a little shake. Do you think you could do this? I mean, it's not too intimidating, is it? A little bit of parsley around the plate as well. Looks good. Okay, let's compare that and look at that versus Eggs Benedict. No, well, not versus, because, you know, I'm not into the versus thing, but at least it's useful, I think, to compare. I think that's charming. Okay. All right. Well, you see, what we're trying to do is to show you that you can produce something that looks good, but it has to be treated in a slightly different way than we would normally do that. And, you know, with something where the fat's been taken out, it's such a good idea to get other flavors to mingle in and really bring it up. Okay. 471 calories was the calorie value of an Eggs Benedict. This is down to 355, so not much, but at least 100 odd. Fat used to be 38, now down to 15. That's pretty good going. And saturated fat at 7. All right, that's because of the bacon. All right, that gives me a 39% brunch egg dish. Not bad. Not bad. Over 30%, but you know you can make some adjustments to that. And cholesterol, 44, down from 507, and sodium is up a bit because of the salt that there is in the Canadian bacon. Dietary fiber is about 1.3, but, you know, it's kind of fun if you're counting those sort of things. But the big moment that always has to be is this. It is exploratory time. And so you just cut down into it. It does look a little bit like an Eggs Benedict, doesn't it? When you cut down into the center, you can actually cut yourself a little wedge out if you're careful. And you see, that's the cheese and the egg. It's actually almost indecent. One worries a little bit about this when you're trying to develop dishes. Oh, but that is nice. Try that for a bunch of people that you love. And, you know, the whole idea is that if somebody's at risk, there's no need to sort of give them dull food. You can spike it up and present it nicely. Looks good. Don't forget the springboard, which is take that idea and create your own. You know, come on, you know, be creative. Now, by way of sort of the creativity, I thought that what would be a good idea would we get the feeling of Asia and egg foo young, and make an egg foo young scramble where they sort of mix the two together and see whether that works. All right? Come on, I'll show you how it's done. Good. Thanks so much for not switching off because of the egg substitute. And I know you haven't switched off because you're still watching. Here, then, in this pan, just a little oil. Just that's for Mike. If you don't know who Mike is, doesn't really matter. But just a half teaspoonful of oil in there. And then, do you remember the time when we had a look at this wonderful flavor called baoziang from Asia? Baoziang means an explosion of fragrance. Well, here's another way of looking at that. I said that you could springboard and use it in all kinds of dishes. Well, here we go again. Now this, if you'd have missed it actually on that occasion, this is 10 little fine slithers of ginger. And if you ever want to see what a ginger root is, by all means don't buy the whole thing. You'd never use it. But just buy a small piece of this and it'll be kept in a little plastic bag. Or you can actually wrap it in a brown paper bag and then put that in a plastic bag and keep it in the fridge. Keeps a long time. Okay, so that's root ginger, and it's very powerful stuff. So very thin slices. And normally, you know, I will make an extraction of that, but in this case, I want to keep it in the dish itself. And so because of that, it's a fine knife, and get down into it and slice it in very tiny, thin pieces. And then one little sliver of that has packs. It's what I call bright notes. When you take salt, fat, and sugars or something, you've got to get bright notes back in their place. And that little tiny piece there is amazing. Got that hot taste to it. Really good. Really need to see it or to experience it. Okay. Now here, I've got a nice, large, fat garlic clove. And so that one, just balance it up down. It's so large, I couldn't get it under. And everyone's saying, isn't that marvelous? That's a beautiful one. You'll love that one. And couldn't smash it. So it's just smashed down there. Just pass the blade through it. Because, again, I don't want any large pieces of it lying around. Good. And this is the three musketeers of this flavor. The flavor is just absolutely remarkable. Now, just cut the bearded ends off there of green onions. And let's slice back from the white ends there. And here, quite a crunchy little piece of it. I want to leave some of those ends for something I want to do at the end there. Or the conclusion, rather than use that language too long. And there it is. Now, oil in the pan, heat it up. And then you can take those three things, the three musketeers of baoziang, and then drop those down. And immediately it starts to hiss. Immediately you get this incredible aroma that comes out of it. Just wonderful. Because then, remember I was saying earlier that if you're going to drop fat out, you've got to get that flavor in, especially when you're dealing with eggs. And egg substitute responds very well to this. Okay, so we'll just let that go over the stove. And then add these to it. Now, this is exactly the same plant or vegetable or fruit if you like, I suppose. This is a capsaicin, which is capsicum, and this is the red pepper, and it's just cut up in small pieces. This is the same thing, but it has been bottled. It's called pimiento when it's been roasted on the outside and peeled. Now, why? Well, it's a question of texture. So it's not only color, but texture as well. Now, you could probably say, oh, Graham, that's just ridiculous. And that's fine if you feel that. You should go ahead and do it. But just try just once and see whether you like the idea of the two kinds of pepper together. So we just place those into the pan too. So one will be crisp and the other one will be that, and it's colorful. Huh? Then a cup of thawed sweet corn. You know, I always give you all of the details so you can write it down. I hope you're writing it down. Then there's the book, you know, whatever way you like to do it. It's your choice. Then, good. Greens, gold, red, great. A little bit of the Canadian bacon, because when I explore how to create some dishes, I like to think of the things about the greatest food that people enjoy so much and what they like about it, and try and get into the thought. How about eggs and bacon on a rainy morning, you know, where you stop by on the way to a construction site, and you stop by one of those little places for breakfast and hot steaming cup of coffee and eggs and bacon sizzling in the pan. Well, so I took that thought and said, all right, well, put some Canadian bacon in there and sizzle that around as well. Now I've got the ginger and the Canadian bacon, and it looks terrific. Smells wonderful. Now for the assault. You think the egg substitute was bad enough? Here it is, tofu. Now tofu is really glycine max. I was absolutely thrilled to hear that it was called max. Glycine, that's soybeans, by the way. And we actually, in the United States, that's where I am at the moment, grow 3/4 of all the soybeans in the world. And so we've got a lot of things to do with it. And this is one of the best. Firm, look for it as firm soy, or bean curd it could be called, tofu. And just stir that in, and what's happening when it reaches that pan, all the other flavors say, hi, you're welcome, you know, because tofu's got almost nothing to say for itself at all. It just sort of walks in and sort of stands there, you know. And all these colorful characters surround it and give all of what they've got in flavor to the tofu. But if the tofu goes on its own, it's pretty sad. You know, it never makes it in a party. You might experience that. All right, now, a little bit of the margarine, again, the polyunsaturated margarine into this one, just to make sure that we're right down on this saturated fat business. And, okay, and one little carton, which is about 8 ounces. When you read the side of the carton, you'll see that it has the same protein content as whole eggs, same volume. So if you're a little bit concerned about, you know, is this just egg white and hasn't got anything to it? No, it's got a good deal of protein, which is excellent. So just let it stand there, you remember, like it did before. And try and avoid getting at it straight away. I know by habit that you'll try and do that, but try to avoid it. And then a little bit of that salt and pepper. Very important indeed, even if you're just having it on its own. Then push it from the sides and pull into the center, okay? Just keep doing it. The more you throw yourself at it, if you whip it around quickly, like you would do eggs, it won't work. It'll break. But you see, keep on pushing it into the center, and it works very well. Keep it so it's moist there, then spread it out. Just spread it out a little bit over the bottom of the pan, and then take all of that cascading color, aroma, color, and texture, pile it into the top. Put, always, with these pans, always get really good, you know, action going as quickly as you can to be able to get the pan clean. And there it is, stirred in together. So, get a plate, pull it. Oh, Mum, I hope you're watching. Just now and again, you know when you've really done something and you think it looks great and you want your mother to watch. This is for 2 people, by the way, so I mean there's plenty there. Right. And there, little bit of rice on the side if you're going to do it European way, or rice in a bowl if you're going to do it Asian way. Yeah. Good. And now let's compare this with the traditional egg foo young and see how we go. Now the actual classic in this case we'll have a look at in a moment, but doesn't it look nice on a plate? Plenty of color and the rice by the side. Looks fine. Now the egg foo young, which is the standard, of course it would be served with rice as well and compared it in the same way, has a sort of beef sauce on it. It's really extraordinary. And of course whole eggs. This is the difference that you get. Not much in terms of the overall calories. So it's 245, but that's a great number. That's with the rice. And then with the fat here, instead of 20 grams of fat, that's down to only 3 grams of fat, one of which is saturated. This is good stuff. So instead of a 63% calories from fat, we've now got down to only 12% calories from fat, teeming with flavor at the same time. Cholesterol only 7, and 314 in sodium, which is a mere bagatelle, whatever that is, and then 3 grams of dietary fiber, which is all the vegetables, which of course are just sensational. Okay. Now, chopsticks, perhaps, if you want to try it that way. And I'm going to try it with just the... You see, the egg substitute has met all those other ingredients. It's so good. It really is. A little rice on the side, and you'll be delighted. How about that for a neat brunch? You've got either of those 2 dishes could be a great brunch for your family. Don't forget, as always, we're trying to minimize the risk because you care for people, and then maximize the flavor because you want to please people. We're such a mixture of the 2, aren't we? Okay? Thanks so much for being with me once again. God bless you. See you next time. Bye. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. And you're very welcome. Welcome. This one is a dessert, and super one. This is a cheesecake idea with the most unusual crust that you ever saw. I've got to get something on the go, so it's one of these tins, which is it's called light. I mean, everything's called light nowadays, isn't it? Evaporated skim milk. And that actually contains about 1.5 cups of evaporated skim milk. And then there are 4 packages of gelatin, I tried to measure to see how much is in each package, and it seems to be just a little under a tablespoon. So if you want to get it in bulk and measure it yourself, that's fine. So I just want to put the one into the other and just whisk that gelatin into the top just to soften it. And as you'll see, the heat's underneath, just mild heat underneath, just to be able to get that down so that every speck can be used. All right, come through. Let me explain what I want to try and do this time. Because what we're doing is looking at a cheesecake and trying to do something really radical, something different. Because you see, on the outside of a cheesecake, generally, is the crust. And I don't know whether you do this one, but most people seem to. There's graham cracker crust, which, of course, the graham flour was designed by a fellow called Sylvester Graham in about 1830. he was a Presbyterian minister and really got off his bike, which is an Australian expression, about, getting a whole grain flour once again, saying that to make white flour was just awful, without the full grain being there. So, when you make a graham cracker crust, you also put with that fat. So, what I'd like to try and do is to cut the fat out of it, surprise for me, and put something else in. Went ahead and sort of looked at it, and I found that the answer was a fig. Amazingly, the fig actually does that work in the same way that the butter seems to do. But, of course, with no fat whatsoever, and huge amounts of fiber, which I love. All right? So, it's really quite a different technique. So if you'd like to see how it's done, really? Come on, let's have a go. Good. I'm just getting some green marker off myself. I seem to get myself stabbed with marker pen every time. Now, let's have a look and see how this is doing. If you put it over, the gelatin over a little heat and then just whip it together, it shouldn't take too long to be able to get out. Let's have a look and see how that's done. It's a bit hard to tell. Later on, I'll show it to you with water. But this one, if you look at the back of the spoon, there's still some little tiny flecks there that are still haven't dissolved. So just keep it on there and make sure that it dissolves absolutely before you add it. Great. Okay, let's have a look at the fig itself. And this is the one that I wanted to show you. The figs, I've got just 18 of these little fellas. It's about a cup and a half of figs altogether. And each of these, when you get them, have got a little curly top on them, which is quite indigestible. There's no way that you can get that stalk and eat that. Well, I suppose there is. It's high fiber. Well, you already know about it, haven't you? Started to chew into it. Cut into the center. If you've never cut into the center of a fig, you're in for a great surprise. Look at the tiny little seeds that there are there. As a matter of fact, if you've got, false teeth, I'm terribly sorry to be personal like this, but I've got a false tooth in the front, so I know. I got it knocked out by an Australian, playing golf, by the way. If you've got false teeth, and one of those little seeds gets underneath, it's bad news. But if you don't have false teeth, it's wonderful, because you can crunch all the way around your teeth. Wonderful texture. All right, so you've got 18 of those, and a small, 17 and a half, and you've got a small processor like this. It needs to be a fairly small one, because I'll show you how it works. And 1 cup of the graham crackers. Those are the standard graham crackers that go into it. And then just push the rest of the 18 on the top and top it off with the rest of the graham crackers they were. So it's in layers when you're setting it up. That on the top surface, and dial it up to about 6 on my machine anyway, and pulse it. If you've got a pulse, it doesn't run it, but it actually does it like that. That starts to get the things generally sort of agreeably combined. No? Then run it. And what's going to happen now as this is running round, you've got the dry graham cracker crust, and you've got the sticky piece of fig, and they're getting to know each other. And they're really sort of linking arms together and gradually going round and round and round. And what you'll see, and it doesn't take but about 35, 40 seconds, it's just beginning to happen now. They're beginning to clump together and become a real dough in there. So it's just coming up. See, now it begins to start to clump. And the moment that it starts to clump, watch it carefully. That's it. Okay, stop it the moment that it clumps together. And you've got a tremendous stuff. Look at it. I nearly called it mixture, but I know I mustn't do that. And there it is down in the top. Now, with a certain amount of water, and water is fine for this purpose, you can't do it with just your bare hands. If you do it with your bare hands, it's sticky, and it's a horrible experience. But if you just get a little water on the board and just turn it around like this, you've got a piece of dough which is ready to be able to be used. Now, what I do with this one, where is it? Here we go. This is a small springform pan. And this one, about 7 inches, and normally you go about 9 inches. So the mix. If you've got a 9-inch one, it's not going to reach the top. But if you can find one of the 7-inch ones, I think they're better for the reason that you can get a smaller slice and yet a taller slice. Taller but shorter. And that way it has a good appearance and you don't have quite so much to eat. It looks great. And that cuts down on the calorie value. Okay. So what I've done several different ways here, but just get it in a nice round shape. Put it in the bottom like that. And then press it out with your fingers, just like that. Press it all the way around so that you've got the base at about 1/4 of an inch. It shouldn't be, heavy at all. And spread it out to 1/4 of an inch thick. Just get, and just, if you go through, doesn't matter, just get a piece and just patch it up. And then just get your fingers at the sides and then just pull it up the sides. Now this takes about 3 or 4 minutes and it's a bit fiddly, so, but I mean, I'm sure you've managed to do that and see after that if I can keep looking at you and then do this. Here's the one that's done. Just completely surrounded and ready for the mix. All right, let's put that on one side and have a look at the mix. This means getting a blender. I hope you've got a blender of some kind. And then into the bottom of the blender, have to go back to this and see how this is doing. Let's just do that check once again. There isn't a single fleck in that. That is completely clear. Good. All right, just warmed up enough. 5 minutes. Don't boil it, but just warm it up. And look, you see, it's creamy. It's almost like it has, thick dairy cream in it, which of course it hasn't. And then here, 3/4 of a cup of the soft brown sugar. Give or take a little bit off the side. 4 tablespoons full of cocoa powder. Now that gives it that chocolate appearance, and this is the cocoa powder that I have. By the way, this one here is called Dutched. You see how it's darker than this one? This one's got an alkali in it, which neutralizes the acidity in chocolate. I find it's easier to mix, and it seems to be less acid as well. Okay, 2 teaspoonfuls. Measure this one, because it's got to be exactly accurate, because you can ruin it if you put too much, of vanilla extract. Pop it in, the real stuff, nothing false. Slap the top on and whiz it, okay? Now, immediately, that's what I like about the Dutch chocolate. Immediately, that goes in, and that's just fine. When you... sudden noise. Now, 3 cups altogether of a small curd, low-fat cottage cheese. And do please add this 1 cup at a time. And let it really incorporate. Wait for the whole to appear and go for it. It takes about 5-6 minutes for that to actually take place. So, thank you. I didn't want to compete with it. Here's the one which has been done 5 or 6 minutes, and I leave 1 cup for the end. Just 1 cup. And then stir in 1 of those cupfuls of the low-fat cottage cheese, and that gives me a kind of textural change. Otherwise, it's really rather like pudding, in the middle, or a custard. But this gives me a chocolatey, vanilla-flavored, gorgeous combination. And all you need to do is to shove that in the refrigerator for a couple of hours, all right? And pull out the one that's set. Wouldn't you love it if you have this sort of thing available? Okay. Now, then with this spring form, you just simply do a clip like that, okay, and pull it off. Isn't that's, I think the person who invented that takes the biscuit for being the most inventive person I've ever known. I'd love to know who he is. And if you're still alive, do let me know, because I think you're terrific. Then you cut the slice, and this is the slice that we've looked at in terms of this. And warm a knife up first, just a little bit. Oh, good. Look. See how that sets up? Now, look at that. Just see how that comes out. And see the flecks on the side. Aren't they beautiful? If you didn't have the flecks on the side, it wouldn't be quite the same. And take a little powdered cocoa and just to sprinkle it around the plate, just to let people know that you've got some. Okay, come on. Let's see the numbers. Whoa, like it. That's nice. It's kind of, we should have a different name for it. What about the Milky Way or something, or the Sagan cheesecake? Right, that's what it looks like, and this is what we tried to do, to take the fat out of the crust and to put the fig in its place. And so I think it works. Let's have a look and see how the numbers react to this, because that's the important thing. All right, so instead of the classic cheesecake, in this case, this one is a classic chocolate cheesecake that I've compared it to, you have 413 calories. That's what it takes. So this one is 210. So we're over 200 saved to begin with. Okay, the fat's 28, which is almost half a day's supply of fat, you know. And so this is down to only 3 grams, one of which is saturated, which means that when you actually multiply the total number of grams by 9 and then express it as a percentage of the total calories, which is the way you get a percentage of calories from fat, it comes to only 11% for a slice of cheesecake, 11% calories from fat. And then cholesterol, look at this, 6. It's hardly worth counting. And then 292 in sodium. Dietary fiber goes up because of the figs to 3, which I'm always thrilled about. And let's have a look. Oh, look at that. It's tender, and the crust there. Remember I told you it has a crunchiness? When the figs are doing their thing, there's just a marvelous little bite to it, and it really works well, okay? Don't forget to stir a little bit so you get the flecks in like that. All right, now, as always, springboarding is really important, and this time, what I'm going to do in springboarding is I'm going to take a vegetable, because we're told to eat up vegetables and stop eating sweets and things. Oh, do you think it would be too sneaky if we actually got a vegetable and made it into a dessert and made it into a cheesecake? Anyway, because, I'm eating my vegetables. Well, I'll show you how it's done. Good, that's going nicely. What I put on here was just the same as before, except in this case, no evaporated skim milk, just plain water. A cup of water and the 4 envelopes of the gelatin. And that now, or there are little bubbles in there because there's not a speck of gelatin that hasn't melted out. Again, very low temperature, don't ever boil it, and it's so important to do that first, otherwise you'll get an oozy mix. All right, just exactly the same as I did before, except on this occasion there is, in with the 18 figs, these little chocolate wafers. I hope you've seen these. They're very crisp and they break easily, and you buy them in packets, and they're called chocolate wafers. Look for them in the supermarket. They're quite fun. Okay, so just turn that on. Again, this for me is 6. Give it a quick pulse first of all. Don't forget that, by the way. If you've got an old-fashioned machine, then you can turn the switch on and off, to be able to pulse it first. When it's done that, then you can run it. It's really just simply to get the dry crumbs and the sticky figs, well integrated together. It's such an interesting idea, this one. Works well every time. Think of springboarding. You've got some favorite cookies. Say, the macaroons, with a coconut. Not too many of those. Those macaroon biscuits, I could put those with figs and come up with a delightful crust on the outside. Maybe some peppermint in there at the same time would do it well too. All right, see when it starts to go at that precise moment, cut it down. And there it is. Now, that becomes then a chocolate fig crust. Now, I don't have to mold that up for you. You know exactly how we did that before. And what I want to do is to get this mix on, because this is really different. To begin with, then, the same basic gelatin structure goes into the bottom, and just pour that in. And then the 3/4 of a cup of soft brown sugar. And, it's just the same as white sugar, come on. But they add a little molasses back in it to color it. Very sweet, and you may even, when you actually taste this, want to get the sweetness down a little bit. Okay, now here, instead of the vanilla, this is a marvelous little collection. I've got powdered ginger, 1/2 teaspoonful each. Powdered ginger, ground cloves, and ground cinnamon. And that, when you put those together, they complement each other in a wonderful way, because it spices the mix. So just pop that in. And let me see, what else have I got to put in here? Oh, and the cottage cheese. with the cottage cheese, you just simply pour a little bit of that in, like that, about sort of 1 cupful, and then start to whiz it up. I always put the lid on just in case, you know, I've wound up with this stuff all over the place. The only important thing to remember with adding this is just a little at a time, and wait, make sure that you've got the whirlpool, the sort of Alfred Hitchcock look in the middle. If that goes away, you've got to stop before adding the next bit. What that's doing, it's showing you, see, it's all gone. Creature from 20,000 fathoms. Up it comes. And then just keep pouring it in. Okay, so there is 2 cups of cottage cheese. That's the low-fat cottage cheese and small cone. All right, we'll just let that keep on doing its thing over there and show you what happens next, because this is the vegetable. And the vegetable here is the butternut squash. Didn't waste too much that time. And then place the blade on the top, press down, and it isn't too hard a squash. If you haven't tried this, by the way, just to bake it and eat it as a squash is just wonderful. But take about 2 pounds in weight altogether you'll need to scoop out for the amount that you'll need here. Place it, I often place it just seeds and all, just on a plate like that, but you can scrape the seeds off before you start. Into an oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 180 degrees centigrade. Give it 40 minutes, takes just about 40 minutes. And then it comes out of the bottom. Quite delightful. See what's happening, you get 3. And all you do is just look at that. When it's beautifully done, it's so soft and tender that you can take a scoop, like you just scoop it out. It's so moist, and it has such a fine, delicious flavor to it as well. So all you then need is something like this. It's rather like a large garlic press. This is indispensable for whipped potatoes and this sort of thing. Fill up that cupful, and look, it squeezes through. It's called a ricer, and it squeezes all through, and you've got, it's nice and smooth, but yet there's just a little bit of mouth texture to that as well. So, when this is now whizzed up, and it takes about that time, 4 or 5 minutes, you know, you can stop it, open it up, and just look at this. Look, just imagine what that tastes like with that cottage cheese. See how that has gone down. It is creamy and soft and spiced, and the cinnamon is there, and the ginger is there, and it's all just marvelous. Now, you notice that I didn't whiz up the vegetable in it, because I wanted a little bit of texture. You see on the top of that spoon there, there's a bit of texture in this, and I want that texture in the same way as I had texture in the previous one. Okay, done. Now, all I have to do is to get the spoon back out of the sink and add 1 cup of, 1 cup of plain non-fat yogurt right at the end. Just stir that in. That gives a little bit of a tart bite to it, gives you the volume that you require for the, and just a little bit of extra. There's nothing, actually there should always be in all mixes, I feel, just a little bit extra, especially if there's kids in the family. Mommy, want to lick the bowl? There you are, darling. See? Just enough to lick the bowl. All right. Walk carefully. The only thing that can ruin it now is an earthquake. And into the fridge. 2 hours, and it should be set up so that instead of serving it, you can bounce it in to your guests. It's not that. You might like to experimentally drop down just 1 envelope of gelatin just to be on the safe side. It depends how hot it is when you serve these things. I think this is just fine like this. Okay. Just a knife, heat it up just a little bit first of all for serving. This is the kind of shape and size, just like the one we did before, that you can get with the numbers that I've got. A plate, and I'll tell you, I am beginning to enjoy the baking and dessert process. Look at that, will you? Look at that, nice. All right. Now, if you get an orange, and you get that there are little peeling devices which you can actually score the outside of an orange, very thin slices, like these here. And what I did is put these into a pot with a little water and just bring it to the boil, and then turn the water off, throw the water away. And that gives me a piece of orange zest, which is really remarkable because it's kind of, it's a bright note, but at the same time it's not overpowering, which it could be if you left it without blanching it first. And you just throw little curly bits of that onto the plate. Isn't that great? You might have seen that in some famous restaurants nowadays. They're always throwing little curly bits of things all over the place. Used to happen by mistake. Now it happens by design. All right, there it is. There's it is. Let's have a look and see about the numbers. Stands up nicely. You see it's nice and tall. If you compare this then, because of that mold, which is only 7 inches across, you see how tall it stands on the plate, and yet it's very short. This one is longer, but it's smaller. And so I think you have a sense of, getting a good plateful. Do you? Good. All right. This is what happens to the numbers. This is compared to the classic, which is a kind of pumpkin cheesecake, if you like. And this one here, I think, could be just sensational at Thanksgiving. Think of it. All right. 249 calories, under the 300, down from 366. But look at the fat. From 27 grams of fat altogether, that's down to 4. And from 16 grams of saturated fat, which I really don't like, that's down to 1. That's just 1 out of the 4. Then that means percentage of calories from fat, which was 65%, now is 13. And isn't that lovely to think that a thing like that can just be 13%? Boy. Cholesterol down to only 10. Sodium at 252, which is fine for dessert. And dietary fiber, a whopping 4. Right, I've still got a piece of that orange in my mouth. That's nice to chew on. Okay. Now, actually, it reminds me of a fine cheese, doesn't it? With a sort of a crust on the outside of the cheese. See the crust there and how good that looks?